So in the last section, you talked about us running out of food.
Yeah.
And the lorries not being able to get there because of Brexit.
Well, there'll be delays.
Do you want to talk about a little bit more about that?
Well, there'll be
delays.
Allegedly, there'll be delays in terms of lorries could be held up longer at the docks because each lorry will have to be checked physically, and that could take up to 2 to 3 minutes, which would end up with, according to some programs on the TV, trailbacks of 30 to 40 miles. And depending on what the stock is, I mean, either whether it's perishable goods, they might not get to the store, or its final destination on time in good quality. So it's a big issue.
And that's mainly perishable goods. What about other types of goods? Would the price rise on those?
Well, the cost to travel will go up. I was listening to one of the radio programs, I think it was LBC, and a guy was saying that it would cost a lot more money for the form filling in. I mean, I think he quoted about 60 quid per load, and the actual time taken to get the paperwork filled in is not just a quick thing. It takes time, so it all causes delays. And according to the guy that this guy ran a white van courier express courier company, and he often 2 or 3 times a week goes into Europe, and basically if Brexit happens, even in the form of a customs union, we still stay in the customs union, his business will probably go bust, and he's just one of many.
Now, one of the things that's quite interesting is that in today's news, we've seen that Marks and Spencers are talking about closing something like 200 shops or 120 shops or something between now and 2020. That's quite a significant drop in their high street shops. Now, I have heard that in America, Walmart has closed down quite a substantial number of shops right across the country, and they were already worried because in some of the small towns, they didn't have the food coming in to their main shopping.
You're talking about Walmart. Well, I heard 2 or 3 weeks back about a merger between Asda and Sainsburys, Asda being owned by Walmart, and I thought it was Walmart taking over Sainsburys. It was a bit of a surprise to me that it turned out to be the other way around. It was Sainsburys putting an offer in to buy Asda.
Oh, I thought it was the other way around as well.
Yeah, I thought that the case, but it wasn't. No, it's Sainsburys, because Walmart are not doing particularly well.
Right, now that makes sense of the story then I heard, which was the Walmart one. So if Walmart's closed down its shops in America, and now it's Sainsbury's buying over Asda, that's quite curious, because that indicates that the Asda brand is not doing so well here, and which is why possibly they're overtaking it.
Well, my understanding is, and I only know basic knowledge about it though, but if Sainsbury's actually do buy out Asda, they will still remain as separate identities. So there will still be an Asda and there will still be Sainsbury's. They're not going to merge the brands into one.
No, I mean, I know your background is IT, and obviously a lot of stuff is being done online. So,
well, the other thing
what sort of impacts have you seen in IT?
The other interesting thing about Brexit is it needs a whole new IT infrastructure. And has there ever been a government IT project that's actually been delivered on time and on budget? The indications are this new piece of IT infrastructure that's needed is not going to be delivered in time for the end of March next year. So more complications.
And what about the impact of what's happening on Friday with this new European legislation?
GDPR.
I know that this evening I've had loads of emails from various different companies that I subscribe to, basically saying that they're shutting down certain community groups, certain newsletters, certain activities that they normally would do. And those resources won't be available. And I know that tonight, after we stop talking, I have to do some internal training with the company that I work for on what those procedures are ready for Friday.
Yeah.
That's a massive impact. Something that has been just bubbling underneath and not really been talked about is suddenly going to hit us like a slap in the face.
But this has been on the cards for ages, and I mean, it is part of a European directive. And although the UK is allegedly leaving the European Union, they're adopting the legislation in its entirety. And in many ways, it's actually a good thing. It protects you and I as individuals. And we can put in a request to be forgotten, which basically means all our data has to be removed from a particular organization's computer systems in its entirety.
So basically, if we choose to become anonymous almost, we can now actually be removed from the system.
Yes.
Whereas I think the way that certain things were beginning to look, especially with the way that facial recognition and all that can happen.
And I mean, the fines if a company gets caught out is quite substantial.
You were talking about the politics and how that there was a two-party system and how things should be changed. What sort of, how do you think politics should actually be run in this day and age that could run successfully?
I think we need a lot of reform. For me, I'd like to see state-funded political parties. The two big parties get money from donors, large organizations, so they have ample amount of money to fight elections, general elections, by-elections, local elections, at the detriment to the smaller parties. For example, the Lib Dems, the bulk of their funding comes through membership subscription with some donations. I think it should all be transparent, and based on the size of the party, you should get state funding. I also think that I mentioned the other day that the House of Lords should be reformed. We should have a second elected chamber under some form of PR. What's quite interesting is that Jeremy Corbyn's making his newly elevated Lords commit to abolishing the House of Lords if they get elevated. So at some point, he would introduce a second elected chamber. The other thing that I'd like to see is obviously a form of proportional representation in the House of Commons. I'm personally in favour of a single transferable votes. I think that's the most fairest of the proportional representation methods of voting. I'd also like to see, and this is a personal view, the local authorities becoming self-autonomous. I think central government has too much control over local councils in terms of funding and overruling local authorities on things like planning decisions. A prime example is up in Lancashire. The county council had a referendum on whether they should have fracking sites, and the government overturned it. So a government's prepared to overturn a referendum when it suits them.
We have more on the way, so please subscribe to this channel and check out the link below if you'd consider becoming a patron to help us keep making more content. Thanks for watching.